Welcome to this pre-recorded session for the Shaping the Future conference with Everactive Schools. We have shared a bit.ly link so that you have an opportunity to be able to preview the slides now and later on when you want to come back to review some of the things that we've shared with you. We're so excited to share a framework with our foundational thinking around building thriving, conscious communities. We envision this work as navigating a suspension bridge and how the understanding of ourselves, our relationships with others, and our contributions to our community provide the stability that we all need.
I'm Kathleen Robertson, Learning Associate from Jigsaw Learning.
And I'm Lorna Hewson. I'm lead learner and co-founder of Jigsaw Learning. We'd invite you to take a look at all of the wonderful resources we have on our website, jigsawlearning.ca, and the many other ways that you can engage with the learning that we've been doing across the province.
When COVID really came to the forefront and schools started to close down, we developed a really deep concern for our partners in schools, including students, parents, staff, and leaders. And we wondered, how are we ever going to come out of this with this deep crisis we were in, and how we could possibly move forward. So in this session, we'll be providing a brief overview of our thinking and what has guided our vision towards a conscious community. And we want to be open that we do not have all the answers by any means, but we wanted to share what we've learned through experience, research, and learning from others. And we believe there are key components that can be used as a guide. A conscious community is a community that prioritizes the well-being of all members because they want the best outcome for everyone as well as for the group as a whole. The community cares for each other and understands that each member needs to be looked after in order for the whole to reach a state of thriving. Our ultimate goal is to function as a conscious community, with all individuals playing an essential role, from their individual contributions to connecting with others and contributing to the whole in a conscious and intentional manner.
So as we've been designing this framework, we have come to relate this journey of developing a conscious community to a swaying rope bridge. The bridge includes the core elements of self, connecting with others, and the stability we find in truly uniting as a community. There are three components that create a well-rounded, balanced support system, and they're represented by three components in a bridge. First of all, we have the planks, and the planks represent each individual and their experiences and how they manage life's events. Without these planks, there would be no bridge. We also have guide ropes that represent our relationships to others and how each relationship both supports and guides the experiences of each individual. And then finally, we have the support ropes across the top. Those support ropes represent the multiple relationships of individuals and groups and the interaction of all of them as a whole. We'll work through each one of these as we share some of our thinking of those three components and to build that vision of a framework for conscious communities. So our first step toward understanding these ideas is to be able to create your own bridge. So we would encourage you to get a scrap of paper and draw yourself a rope bridge. Throughout the presentation this morning, we are going to encourage you to do some reflection around each of those three essential components of the rope bridge and how they impact each other and how your lived personal experience influences each one of those.
Our bridge never stays still, and sometimes it swings wildly in the wind. We sometimes hope for a hero to rescue us, but there are no heroes to do this work for us. To be our own heroes, we need to be able to connect with and to depend on ourselves. And as we do this work, we can practice bringing ourselves back to center. Now, that being said, there are times when we intentionally bring support into our personal communities because we understand that reaching out and accessing support is a way that we can be our own hero by increasing our community in order to look after ourselves. So what we need is not a hero to sweep us away and change our circumstances for us, but a solid understanding of the components of conscious community so we can live fully within ourselves, within our relationships, and as a whole. So to reflect on the components we see in a conscious community, we start by examining how we can ensure well-being of all. And this begins with understanding ourselves and understanding who we are. Our interactions with others build our understanding of ourselves as well as influence each other. And each opportunity we have to interact with others contributes to the larger community as a whole. And when we are aware of all our interactions through connecting with each other, then we begin to build a conscious community. Within our classrooms, buildings, and organizations, we see these three components, and it doesn't matter what our role is. Every person is a key part of a community and has a contributing part to the health of the entire community. Together, we are responsible for the community. Parker Palmer has a really great quote about leadership. He says, leadership is a concept we often resist. It seems immodest, even self-aggrandizing, to think of ourselves as leaders. But if it's true that we're part of a community, then leadership is everyone's vocation, and it can be an evasion to insist that it is not. When we live in the close-knit ecosystem called community, everyone follows and everyone leads. So we begin with self. Every community is a group of individuals. Each person is their own mini ecosystem of complex parts. Our relationships and patterns of interaction with each other are also their own ecosystem. And our community is made up of individual selves, and we are connected as a network through our relationships. When we hold each other, our community is strong. And in education, we see all three layers in a school or system. Staff and students as individuals connect with others through relationships and contribute to the whole as a greater community. And each school and district have their own culture that is established through these layers. Every individual can take responsibility through leadership and their own contribution as a whole. So to examine self a little bit as the starting place of community, we developed this visual to represent how we see the planks of the swaying bridge interacting with self. So self is represented as the center circle, and by self we're referring to that place of stillness and quiet and authenticity within us. And we can think of our identity as our perceptions, thoughts, personalities, and experiences, but self underlies these things. It's the core of our being. We can experience self in moments of presence. So through reading, research, and personal reflection, and a lot of discussion, we've arrived at 4 areas that we feel could be attended to in order to help us move to a state of thriving and help our bridge stop swinging so wildly and help us come back to balance. So these core elements include the intellectual part of ourselves, our desire to learn and grow through schooling, organized means, or through natural means, those life experiences that come our way that we can learn lessons through. Our spiritual side, seeking guidance and direction through means beyond ourselves. Our physical selves we need to engage our body in movement, look after our physical health, and that physical aspect of our well-being and our emotional health. Sometimes we have intense feelings that are motivated internally and externally. So these layers impact our perceptions, our thoughts, and our beliefs. And they can also be impacted by our relationships, circumstances, and internal perceptions and thinking.
So when we think of trying to imagine our life as a bridge, we want to be able to create that stability of that bridge with little sway, little motion, so that we can continue our journey. So how do those four core elements of ourselves play into this idea of a bridge? And I'll go back to, again, thinking about those integral parts of a rope bridge. And our first analogy comes with the planks. Thinking about each one of those planks, without them we would have no bridge. But to think about the application of the planks being those four core elements of ourselves. So some of those planks are focused intellectually, some of them are focused spiritually, some of them are emotional, and some of them are physical. And what we come to think about is really having that clear understanding of those four core elements within ourselves and having a clear awareness of how we function when we're faced with diversity. That provides the first level of support, is just having that awareness of those four components. When we look at adverse times, when we face adverse times, we tend to lean more heavily on one plank to allow other planks that may be impacted by a certain circumstance to heal. So we see the bridge begin to sway when we are impacted by experiences and challenges in our life. When we're faced with a physical challenge, like being sick, we lean toward our intellect in reading and researching and seeking out a better understanding of that illness so that we can begin to heal, we can begin to understand how to make ourselves well, and what other remedies we might seek in order to be well and to strengthen that physical piece. So we might lean more on the intellectual planks in order to allow that physical plank to heal. So Kathleen is going to share a personal experience for her as an application for understanding how we move from plank to plank and how different experiences in our life really influence how we look at those four core elements of self.
So, several years ago, when I had my children, I struggled with some fairly severe postpartum depression. And the second time I recovered, it was like being sent forward like a slingshot. It was really a catalyst for overall healing. And during that time, I shed a lot of beliefs I held and let go of the idea of should, and really released myself from a trap I had been personally holding myself in regards to my beliefs about who I was and what I should be. And over a period of several years, I really I broke, and I spent years wrestling with my thoughts and emotions until I finally came to the place that I let my world implode and accept that I could let go of my marriage. And in that process, I lost my community, and I stood on the plank of physical activity, which at the time was the only spark that I felt. And that gave me the space to carry me through and work through those complicated emotions and try and weave my threads back together again. And so in that example, my emotional plank really was almost absent, and in its place I just held onto that physical plank.
Thanks for sharing that, Kathleen. It is really important for us to understand each of those four core elements so that we can understand what's happening as we move through different experiences in our life. So let's return to your bridge visual, the visual that you created, that you drew at the beginning of our session here. And what I'd like you to do is to think about a time when one of your planks shifted. Which one was it? Look at your bridge and make some notes and allow yourself just a moment to be able to think about how do you use those planks to be able to move through experiences that you face in your life. We would encourage you to pause the video for a moment if you need some time for reflection at this point.
So all four elements of our bridge may never be totally balanced. That just isn't real life. But how we react to those elements can be supported by a return to self. And as we've said before, we feel we're our own hero first, and we can look after ourselves. So mindfulness is a really powerful strategy to return to self. And developing mindful state is really key to coming back to center. It's like a muscle that needs to be practiced consistently over time. So when we hear people talk about mindful practice, the practice is key in there. It's something that's repeated over and over and becomes easier over time. When we're aware of our thoughts, then we can detach from them and see that those elements are separate from who we are. Those parts of a plank, those things that are happening to us, they're not who we are. They're external circumstances. And we maintain our presence within ourselves, within our relationships, and within our community. And that focus we put on presence and self contributes to our next steps. So we'll do an example of a brief mindful practice here by focusing on our breath. Our breath is always with us no matter where we go. And just by focusing on it, we can calm our bodies, calm our minds, and return our awareness to the present moment and focus on sensations and think of our thoughts kind of like clouds floating through the sky, or like the passing weather. The weather is not who we are. It is something that happens, and it comes and goes. It's impermanent. So we'll just do a little practice. So if you can find a quiet spot to sit with your feet on the floor and sitting up straight, make yourself comfortable. And we're going to just focus our attention on the breath. And this is something you can do throughout the day, anywhere that you're at. So all we're going to do is follow our breath and notice. We're going to breathe in and say, I'm breathing in, and breathe out. And notice that we're breathing out. Then breathe in and notice the sensation of the breath coming into your body. And breathe out. And notice how your body changes as you breathe out. Breathe in. Sometimes you might notice that the breath coming into your body is cool, and breathe out. So by doing this, we have no expectations. We're not trying to change anything. We're simply present. And you can use this strategy anytime. Just focus on the breath and let the thoughts go. It could be a few 5 in out breaths while you're supervising or collecting work, or sometimes after you hang up after a phone call. It's a good strategy to use to come back to center and not carry those things with you for your next step in the day.
Your breathing and the just moving into that moment allows us that pause for reflection. And there is huge power in creating that pause as you have your interactions through your daily life. So our ultimate endeavor really is to connect, to create a community that is thriving through the care and connectedness of every individual who are contributing to that community. Community begins with each individual self and what they have in their heart. Long before community is evident in outward relationships, it must be present in the individual as a capacity for connectedness. And so we move to how we connect with each other and how we create that next component of togetherness. So we have a quote from Chris Willard on the screen here from Cambridge, and he reminds us that it's important to recognize that we create the opportunity for togetherness, and that's not only an emotional or psychological need, but that creates a physical response. When we turn back to our bridge, the guide ropes are the connections that hold us together, that allow for our bridge to be steadied. Brené Brown talks about connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, and when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from that relationship. When we think about togetherness and connection in this way, we recognize the importance of creating connections by allowing others to be heard and to provide a safe place for this to happen. Connection creates an opportunity for our sense of belonging and our sense of safety within our community. Our relationship are what allows us to respond to the need of others by supporting their bridge. When we're conscious about how we interact with others, we support their emotional safety. Connections are absolutely necessary for a healthy school culture. For school staff, we think about how we depend on those relationships between each other and how we lean on those to be able to create that collaborative culture where we are endeavoring to support all the students. And for students, we know that the relationships we build for them have lasting impact on not only their learning, but as well their life and their lifelong interactions with other adults.
A way to really facilitate that connection with the others is through deep listening. And Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Buddhist monk, teacher on mindfulness, global ethics, and peace, has a really great quote. He says, deep listening is the kind of listening that can relieve the suffering of another person. So when we're engaging in deep listening, we're just being present. There's no fixing. We might have some advice that we would love to give, but that waits for another time. Our focus is simply being present and listening to the other person. When we do this, often ideas surface for the other person and they talk their way through their own problem or their own issue, and they can access their own inner wisdom. So you're really supporting them that way, as well as giving them space to tell their story, which can be very healing too. Otto Scharmer, who is a professor at MIT, describes 4 levels of listening. And the first level of listening he talks about is habitual listening, where you're really just listening from your own knowledge. He calls it from within the prison of your mind, where you're only listening in order to confirm what you already know, to confirm your own beliefs and your own thoughts. So you're listening to be right. The second level he calls factual listening, where you're focusing on the person you're talking to, but you're focusing with the intent of learning something new or disproving something that you know. So you might notice this kind of listening, say in a PD session, where you come to just to learn a certain skill or to improve a practice that you're interested in. Level 3 is empathetic listening, or a type of deep listening, and that's really listening from the heart, where you're tuning into the other person. The boundaries between the two of you may seem to disappear, and you're just there. You're tuning into them and their perception. And then level 4 listening goes beyond this, and he calls this generative listening, where the barriers between you and the whole seem to disappear, and you're able to understand issues deeply and to respond appropriate and to allow new ideas to emerge from deep within yourself. So deep listening is equally applicable whether we're approaching an issue in a personal or professional context. When we come to work, we are in a human profession and we bring our whole being to the table, especially when we're working with young children. There's no barrier between our personal and professional selves. We are our authentic selves. And so it really doesn't matter. We're the same person at home, at school, at the grocery store, uh, driving to work. We are an authentic human. So when we're wrestling with something, when we're collaborating together to solve a problem, that united self is what we're bringing to the table. And these deeper levels of thinking are necessary to honor the personal self, to honor the professional selves, and to move our schools into a thriving state. So we're listening not to confirm what we know and to repeat the same practices and patterns of behavior, but to really move to that thriving state. These deeper levels of listening are necessary. We need to think with open hearts and open minds to allow healing and to allow new ideas to emerge.
When we engage in that deep listening, there is huge impact in schools and districts in the work that you do. And as Kathleen said, to bring your personal self forward and engaging in that deep listening, but alongside, it's not separate and apart, that professional life. But when we truly see that deep listening happening, then we see impact around effective collaboration, engaging in problem solving that has a huge impact on the students and the responses that we provide. It really creates that collective efficacy, the increase of efforts as a team, that we are working together and really focused on the task at hand. And then, of course, really focusing on the child as a whole, as opposed to just being able to relate to the academics and their needs around that intellect. But there, again, we go back to those planks in the bridge that for every student that we work with, those 4 planks are also evident and need our attention. So that deep listening that we engage in really allows and impacts in a great way in schools and in our classrooms.
So what this looks like in practice happens one-on-one with a colleague, with a friend, with a family member. So if you can choose over the next few days just one interaction, and when someone's approaching you with an issue, a problem, an idea, a story, just be present. If it's helpful, just return your attention to the breath for a few seconds and focus on the other person and listening from the heart. If you suspend judgment and be present, then you can notice if there's a difference in your reaction within yourself, and also notice, how do they respond? Is there a way that you can support one of your planks?
So we just want to take a moment again to go back to your bridge visual and to think about that concept of togetherness and relationships. How do your guide ropes assist you in your journey? Those relationships, how do they assist you in your journey of day-to-day living? Who are those people that help you and that you connect with deeply, and ensure that you are engaging in that together, the development of togetherness and relationships? And how does that deep listening support those relationships? So we would encourage you to pause for a moment again, look at your visual of your bridge, and make a few notes about your personal reflections, and just take a moment to think about how that element of togetherness really creates that level of support through your guide ropes.
When we're united with ourselves, we're able to bring our authentic nature to our work. And this is really the beauty of a true community. Every member has unique gifts to offer, which make the whole stronger. And we see community as represented by the groups, and they have purpose and vision. And we look after ourselves and each other first. Then we can reach out to the higher vision of our community. So community can do a lot of different things. It can shift and respond together to address their own challenges within themselves, shift and respond together to reach for a higher purpose. For example, supporting all children to realize their potential. It can shift and respond together to help balance an individual or group whose planks have shifted, as we see in collaborative response when we are engaging in those conversations and that deep listening and generating ideas to support individual students. So I'll turn it over to Lorna to share a really powerful personal experience.
So I'd like to just be able to share an experience of how I had an outpouring of community based on relationships and awareness of myself and for my son. When my son was 19, he worked for an adventure camp in New Zealand and was loving life. My life was completely turned upside down when I received a call from the Canadian Embassy letting me know that my son had been killed in a car accident. As news spread across the community, my house began to fill with my family and friends and members of the community, both young as they were Cam's friends and Katie's friends, and old as members across the community came to share their compassion and support for the events that had happened. I look back now and I realize that the relationships that my son and I had developed throughout our lives actually resulted in this overwhelming response. People came without an agenda. They weren't there to talk to me specifically unless I needed it. They weren't there for accolade of coming to the event, but they were just there. They were making coffee, they were visiting with each other, they were picking up where there was a need, they were buying tissue or making lunch. Whatever needed to happen, they were ready and prepared to be able to step in. When I think back now, I think about how they were so authentic in responding to what was needed in the moment and to show up without an agenda. They had true compassion for us. There was truly a spirit of community and true commitment to serve and to support as was needed. And this was actually one of my greatest learning experiences through this event. It really did surface the true essence of compassion and caring through that conscious community.
When you're present and not preoccupied, it creates a space for that noticing and awareness. So this is why we start with the work of self. And when we're present, united within ourselves, we can bring our authentic and true selves forward to build community. As we become more present and aware, we're able to extend our reach and support those around us. In a school, we're better able to meet the needs of a whole child, as opposed to just addressing academic concerns. We have a greater awareness of individual students and a greater awareness of the strengths of the team to better support the needs of everyone. Our increased awareness can also attend to the needs of others. through a thoughtful and intentional manner, especially during stressful times. And Otto Scharmer refers to moving from ecosystem to, or from ecosystem to ecosystem awareness. So, meaning we can move from an individual perception and focusing on ourselves into a bigger picture thinking by recognizing our interconnectedness. This acts like building blocks where the actions of one, the foundations of each individual, and the connections of with others impacts everyone. We reach beyond thinking of only ourselves to becoming aware of the community around us and develop a deeper understanding of our interconnectedness. To move our community into a thriving state, we remain aware of keeping one another balanced. And in addition, we are able to move into that innovative space of safety and creativity.
So once again, we return to the visual of a bridge and provide you with an opportunity to pause and reflect. Think about a time that you experienced those support ropes. Think about a time when you were in a stressful place and that the community stepped in and surrounded you and wrapped around you and supported you in that period. How do you engage an explicit awareness of yourself and an explicit awareness of togetherness to contribute to build that sense of community? So we come back, we return to that definition of conscious community, and we would reflect on that idea of consciously and explicitly focusing on our well-being, ourselves and our relationships with others, which should really be our highest priority and which will provide the best outcomes for everyone involved.
As we think about how we can facilitate being present and calm for ourselves and others in the busyness of workplace, we invite you to contribute to a Give One, Get One document, which you can access by clicking on the image or clicking on the link that is embedded in the slides. And this will give you a chance to reflect on some practical strategies that you might use to be present in the workplace, and you may get some new ideas as well. We value your input, and we know that together we are much more powerful than we are on our own.
So we just want to thank you and for listening and for engaging with us, and we wish you all the best as you continue your journey across your bridge. We would encourage you to contact us should you have any questions or would like to further some of the ideas. We would love to be able to hear from you. Our email addresses are there. And again, several different ways that you can connect with Jigsaw Learning as well. I would encourage you to reach out. We have so many resources on our website that are that would be really helpful for you. We also have left a slide that has references for further reading. A lot of these references are references that have influenced our thinking and our way forward. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and take care. Enjoy the rest of your conference.